Around this time last year, we got what I would call the best video game reboot remake of all time in Resident Evil 2. Not only was Resident Evil 2 a hit, it was also the first video review I ever did, and it seems fitting we're back here again with the remake of Resident Evil 3, and fucking hell, Capcom have done it again. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis originally released in September of 1999, and my earliest memories of this game had me shitting myself as I was only 7 years old. Hearing and seeing shambling zombies shuffle towards you, God, try saying that, while you're trying to frantically blow off their heads is insane. Safe to say, even after watching this game, I wasn't sleeping for a week. My first real experience after that with a Resident Evil title was with Resident Evil 5, playing the campaign co-op with co-host This Beautiful Man, also known as Tom. After loving every moment of Resident Evil 2 last year, I couldn't wait to see what was next, and lo and behold, Resident Evil 3 was getting the same treatment. If you don't know much on the Resident Evil series, these remakes are the perfect place to start. Resident Evil 2 and 3 take place in the same night at different hours, but we're here talking about Resident Evil 3. You'll play as Jill Valentine, who's a returning character from the first Resident Evil game, who's in the middle of Raccoon City during the T-Virus outbreak, which is basically a zombie outbreak. On top of being caught in a zombie apocalypse, Jill is being hunted by Nemesis, a grotesque, hulking behemoth. Now, if you thought Mr. X from Resident Evil 2 last year was terrifying, then be prepared for the true meaning of fear.
What's he do? Just say base or freeze. What a tip.
If you played Resident Evil 2 last year, then you know the mechanics and gameplay of Resident Evil 3, but there are some changes. Resident Evil 2 was more of a survival horror based title, while Resident Evil 3 seems to be more on the action vibe. Best way to describe it is it's Resident Evil 2 with the rebooted Tomb Raider series put together. Even Jill Valentine's new costume in this series reminds me a little bit of Lara Croft. In the introduction of Resident Evil 3, you quickly learn the fight or flight mechanics when it comes to Nemesis. Unlike fighting Mr. X, in some instances it may be better to do some damage to Nemesis rather than keep running. You'll also have the standard yet terrifying zombies, the same as what we got last year. Unlike last year's one though, where it may be advised to clear all the zombies in the room, this time there's too many to deal with. Thankfully, you'll have a dodge ability that, if done at the right time, you'll go into a slow-mo mode and be able to get some time to breathe and pull off a headshot. Just like last year, you'll have safe rooms, which is where you'll be able to save the game using typewriters, and storage lockers where you'll be able to store items, you derp. Just like previous Resident Evil titles, these rooms are safe from enemies, including Nemesis. You can see in this clip I sprinted to a safe room, and you can hear him walking around outside.
Never leave the day room. Never leave the day room.
With RE3 being more of a action based than last year's, you'll need to manage your inventory a bit more. You'll have limited spots, but ammo can be a little easier to find or craft. You need to manage what weapons you have on you, your ammo, and your healing items, and for the first time I had to guess what weapon I needed before each situation. On the streets of Raccoon City, I'd be fine with a pistol, but some areas I needed my shotgun or assault rifle. Just make sure you store your items rather than dismantling them. Now, it wouldn't be a RE title without having to deal with some other random disgusting monsters. Just like the sewers from Resident Evil 2, if there's one thing I hate more than zombies in a horror game, it's spiders.
What?
You'll again go through sewers, and after finishing Resident Evil 2, as soon as I entered these sewers, I immediately had flashbacks. Though, unlike Resident Evil 2, you'll spend a fair amount of time in the streets of Raccoon City. You'll see piled up cars, looted shops, and Capcom have even put little details in the locations of Raccoon City. There's a donut shop near a power station, and inside the power station you can see a full box of donuts just sitting there. I mean, honestly, if there was a zombie outbreak and I had a full box of donuts, I'd be downing these things in the corner and then popping myself in the head. On top of these new areas you'll explore, you'll also return to some of the areas from Resident Evil 2's reboot of last year, where you can see what caused some certain events. I'd even say it's better to play RE3 before playing RE2 so you can play it more chronologically.
You shitting me?
Now here's what you've been waiting for, Nemesis. Resident Evil's version of the Kool-Aid Man.
Oh yeah!
This fucker is Mr. X on speed. He's slow and shambling like Mr. X, but he can leap to your location unlike Mr. X, and he's got abilities. Nemesis has a tentacle from his hand, and he'll use it as much as Indiana Jones and his whip. If you try to run away from Nemesis in a straight line, he'll hook you, drag you in to the ground, and then try to stomp on you. You'll either need to run in zigzags when possible, or roll out of the way when you're under his boot. Depending on where you are in the story, he'll also have weapons that'll change how you act around him. During some of these moments, you'll experience script-like events similar to what we got with the Tomb Raider series, and I'm not complaining about this at all. It's frightening when Nemesis is around, but it's also an excitement that one can't describe. Yes, he can get in the way, but play it smart, you'll not only be able to avoid him, but deal some form of damage to him, causing him to fuck off. He's a little bit like the Xenomorph in Alien Isolation. But now, Resident Evil isn't a franchise I know a fuckload about. It's not like Star Wars or Gears of War or What's in Your Mum's Bedside Table. But a question for the hardcore fans. Does the T-Virus, the virus that turns people into zombies, make them more durable to headshots? Now, I am playing this on Pansy mode because, well, it's a horror game and I'm a bitch, but a headshot is a headshot. It's an issue I had with Resident Evil 2 last year, and it's still an issue here. I'll put upwards of 9 rounds in some instances into a standard zombie's head, and then they'll go down. Yet in some scripted cutscenes, a single round to the head will put them down, no problem. If you're playing on hard mode, sure, 9 rounds, no problem, but if like me, you're playing on pansy mode, then 1 round per head. Sure, I'll have a surplus of ammo, but I'll need that any time Nemesis is around. Small negative here, but when you have dialogue outside of a cutscene, the lip sync doesn't match up. You'll enter a radio, and if you turn the camera around to see Jill's face, you can easily notice that the lip sync doesn't match. It's a little bit like we got earlier this year with Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Though the voice acting is fantastic, and during any dialogue outside of a cutscene, I'd stop whatever I was doing just to listen. As you can see, Resident Evil 3 is fantastic, and as you progress through the story, you'll see Jill get more damaged and exhausted as time goes on. Basically, everything has been redesigned in this remake, including Nemesis, and his new facial design and costume look a little weird. Rather than his original gothic-style trenchcoat and stomping boots, it looks like he's either wrapped in a heap of morgue bags or garbage bags. His head has also been redesigned, and it looks like a 7th grader's art project. The original design for Nemesis is iconic, and it even carried over to titles like Marvel vs. Capcom and that awful Resident Evil movie. If you loved Resident Evil 2, then RE3 will be on your list. The gameplay is crisp, the voice acting is top notch, and as you can see, it's visually stunning. If you're a fan of the 1999 game, then I assume this game is on top of your bucket list, and dude, it's fucking worth it. So far, Capcom are the king of remastering and remaking their own titles. If you're looking for a fun challenge of a game, not like Dark Souls, but let's say you're not a fan of horror titles as you get scared easily, RE3 is that perfect challenge. And once you've finished RE3, go back and play Resident Evil 2, or check out the new multiplayer game, Resident Evil Resistance.